It's finally here! The refresh of AMD Ryzen processor with the new Ryzen 4000 series, as well as a returning few favorite from the Ryzen 5000 series. So right here, we have the new Ryzen 3 4100, Ryzen 5 4500, Ryzen 5 5500, Ryzen 5 5600, and Ryzen 7 5700X. Let's go through some spec and information of the new processor, beginning with the Ryzen 4000 series. The Ryzen 4000 series are based on the Zen 2 Plus architecture, and we begin with the Ryzen 3 4100. So the Ryzen 3 4100 is a 4-core 8-thread CPU with a base clock speed of 3.8 GHz and a turbo boost clock of up to 4 GHz. It also has 4 MB of level 3 cache. We think that this processor is a great entry-level budget processor for anyone looking to get themselves into the AM4 platform, since there's a lot of upgrade options for the AM4 platform later on. Next up, we have the Ryzen 5 4500, which is a 6-core 12-thread processor with a base clock speed of 3.6 GHz and can turbo up to 4.1 GHz. It has 8 MB of level 3 cache, and we think that this processor is a great option for anyone looking for a 6-core budget processor that is great for productivity as well as a lot of games nowadays. Afterwards, we'll be moving on to the Ryzen 5000 series. Starting off with the Ryzen 5000 series, we have the Ryzen 5 5500, which is a 6-core 12-thread processor. Now, similar to all the Ryzen 5000 series, it uses the Zen 3 architecture, and it has a base clock speed of 3.6 GHz and can turbo up to 4.2 GHz. It has a level 3 cache of 16 MB, so it's half of what the 5600X is currently offering. However, with this reduction in cache, pricing should be a lot more accessible for anyone looking to get into the Zen 3 architecture. Before moving on to the next processor, we should mention that the 4100, 4500, and 5500 only supports up to PCI-e Gen 3. So for anyone looking out for a PCI-e Gen 4 NVMe, do take note on that. Coming up, we have the Ryzen 5 5600. Now this is a more anticipated CPU as it is the direct successor to the popular Ryzen 5 3600. It has 6-core 12-thread with a base clock speed of 3.5 GHz and is able to turbo up to 4.4 GHz. It has 32 MB of level 3 cache, and it should be quite interesting to see how it stacks up against the current ongoing Ryzen 5 5600X. And finally, we have the Ryzen 7 5700X. It is an 8-core 16-thread processor with a base clock speed of 3.4 GHz and is able to turbo up to 4.4 GHz. It also has 32 MB of level 3 cache. This processor will be quite good for anyone looking to do any thread-heavy application such as Blender or Premiere Pro, but doesn't require such high clock speed such as gaming. All this new processor comes with a TDP of 65 watts only. However, something to note is that the Ryzen 7 5700X doesn't come included with a box cooler, so make sure you get a cooler along with your 5700X. Whereas all the rest of the processors mentioned here will come with the Rave Stealth. So how does this new processor refresh stack up against the current lineup? Well, for that, we did a few testing, some productivity software, as well as a few games. For our testing, we'll be using more common to mid-range configurations because we feel that this is more representative of what our customers are getting with our Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 7 builds. So from what we tested from the new Ryzen processor, they seem to slot themselves perfectly in between the ongoing 5600X and 5800X and giving more options for the mid-range market. For example, the 5700X seems to be the perfect CPU for anyone looking for a high core and thread count processor for work application that doesn't require as much clock speed as gaming. However, the 5600X and 5800X should still be a great choice for gamers with their higher clock speeds. The Ryzen 4100 and the Ryzen 4500 seems like great budget choices for anyone looking to get into the AM4 platform without having to spend too much while still getting great performances. A benefit of getting into the AM4 platform has always been you can always upgrade to a more powerful processor later on, like the 5950X, without having to change motherboard. So these two chips are great options for that. On the pricing side for these processors, the Ryzen 3 4100 will be 459 ringgit, the Ryzen 5 4500 will be 579 ringgit, the 5500 will be 729 ringgit, the 5600 will be at 899 ringgit, and the Ryzen 7 5700X will be priced at 1299 ringgit. Overall, it seems that AMD is offering more choices for the DIY PC builders, allowing for more flexibility for their processor choices, such as pairing an inexpensive B450 motherboard for the 5500, or even for existing B450 motherboard owners, pairing it with the 5500 seems like a good option as you won't feel like you're losing out on new features such as PCI-e Gen 4. And there you have it. We hope that with this video, you can make a more informative purchase for your next processor. And we would like to give a special thanks to AMD Malaysia for providing us all these processors to test, and give a special thanks to Thermalright Malaysia for providing us a cooler to test our systems. If you'd like to get your hands on these new Ryzen processors, you can feel free to contact us on our Facebook or WhatsApp. That's all from me today. Stay safe and bye-bye!